Imagine a player so good he could single-handedly change the destiny of an entire team. A basketball player whom opponents feared, coaches respected, and statistics still place alongside the greatest names in NBA history. Yet there is one strange detail. Despite his incredible achievements, millions of fans could never truly love him. Moreover, many of his own teammates openly admitted that playing alongside him was extremely difficult. We are talking about Rick Barry, one of the most outstanding forwards of his generation and a man who forever changed the perception of what a true leader should be. If you enjoy, just like I do, discovering the real stories behind NBA legends, their incredible highs, tragic downfalls, and the little-known facts that are rarely talked about today, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps the channel grow and makes new videos possible. Thank you. Now, let's continue. He led the league in scoring, won a championship, was named Finals MVP, and demonstrated a level of basketball that many experts consider underrated even today. Barry was the main engine behind the Golden State Warriors' triumph in 1975, when the team sensationally claimed the championship title against all odds. Many believe that without him, this success would have been simply impossible. One would think such a career should have turned him into a universal favorite. Usually, such players are remembered with admiration, invited to celebratory events, and former teammates tell only warm stories about them years later. But in Rick Barry's case, things turned out quite differently. He was respected for his skill, he was admired as a basketball player, his game was carefully studied by future generations of players, yet, at the same time, controversies never ceased to surround his name for decades. Some called him a true genius who always spoke the truth, no matter how unpleasant it might be. Others were convinced that his incredible talent was accompanied by such a difficult personality that it was precisely this trait that prevented Barry from receiving the recognition his athletic feats deserved. He constantly argued. He clashed with club executives, did not hesitate to criticize coaches, could openly express grievances to teammates right during a match, and never picked convenient words just to maintain good relations. For him, there was only one thing that mattered: winning. If anyone, in his opinion, stood in the way of that goal, Barry said so directly, regardless of who was standing before him. That is why many called him the most inconvenient man in professional basketball. He did not want to be a diplomat, did not try to please journalists, and never strived to fit the image of an ideal superstar. While others learned to speak nicely in front of cameras, Rick preferred to say what he actually thought. Such honesty thrilled some, while literally driving others out of their minds. Yet the main question arises: how did it happen that a man who is today unhesitatingly included among the greatest players in NBA history simultaneously turned out to be one of the most controversial and unpopular champions of his era? Why did his relationships with others fail to improve even after his historic title? And was his character truly the only thing to blame, or was there something much more complex hidden behind all these conflicts? To answer these questions, we have to return to the very beginning of this story, long before the championship parades, loud scandals, and the legendary shot that still remains one of the most unusual trademarks of world basketball. It was right there that not only Rick Barry's unique talent began to take shape, but also those traits that would forever alter his entire destiny. Rick Barry was born on March 28, 1944, in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Basketball entered his life very early, but in childhood, no one could have guessed that this tall, slender kid would one day become one of the most prolific scorers in the history of professional sports. Even then, those around him noticed one particular trait in him. He was incredibly demanding, not only of himself, but of everyone around him. If someone approached the game half-heartedly, Barry took it almost as a personal insult. Gradually, basketball became his main pursuit. He spent endless hours on the court, practicing shot after shot, striving to bring every movement to automation. Rick was not interested in a flashy style of play or spectacular moments for the audience. He was interested solely in the result. He was convinced that if a more efficient way to score points or win a match existed, That exact method had to be used, whether people liked it or not. During his high school years, Barry rapidly turned into one of the most promising young players in his region. He was distinguished not only by his high-scoring output, but also by an astonishing understanding of the game. He knew how to read the court a few seconds in advance, read opponents' moves brilliantly, and almost always made the right decisions. At the same time, the future star already possessed a rather difficult personality. He hated losing even in practices, and he took defeats much harder than many professional athletes. The University of Miami marked the next important stage. It was here that Barry's talent fully blossomed. With each season, his statistics became more impressive, and his name appeared more and more frequently in sports newspapers nationwide. He consistently scored a massive number of points, became the team leader, and gradually turned into one of the best players in college basketball. However, alongside his outstanding play, his reputation as a man who never agreed to stay silent grew as well. If Rick believed the referees were making mistakes, he said so openly. If he saw problems in his own team's play, he did not try to hide his opinion. Many admired his confidence, but there were also those whom such straightforwardness irritated more and more. Barry also stood out for his attitude toward training. He demanded maximum dedication, not just from himself, but from his teammates. If someone did not give their all, Rick could make a sharp remark right during practice. For some, this served as extra motivation, while for others, it became a source of serious tension within the team. Even then, a trait manifested that would accompany him throughout his entire professional career. He could not tolerate mediocrity and never concealed his attitude toward people who, in his view, failed to meet high standards. Yet alongside this, it was impossible to argue with the main point. On the court, Barry looked phenomenal. His speed of decision-making, shooting accuracy, and basketball IQ noticeably set him apart from the majority of college-level players. Scouts from NBA clubs closely monitored virtually every single match he played, realizing they were looking at a future superstar. By the time he graduated, almost no doubts remained. Rick Barry was ready for the next step. The question was not whether he would make it to the NBA, but how quickly he would prove capable of dominating among the world's strongest basketball players. And very soon, it would become clear that adaptation to the professional league was practically unnecessary for him. From his very first games, Barry began playing as if he had spent many years in the NBA, instantly forcing the entire basketball community to talk about the emergence of a new superstar. Expectations prior to Rick Barry's debut were high, but reality surpassed even the boldest predictions. In 1965, the San Francisco Warriors selected him in the draft, expecting to acquire a talented young forward. However, just a few months later, it became clear that the team had acquired a player of an entirely different caliber. Barry burst into the NBA as if no adjustment period existed. While most rookies were getting used to the speed of professional basketball, he confidently scored points against the league's best defenders, acted coolly in clutch moments, and played with the confidence of a man who had long belonged to the elite. In his very first season, he averaged over 25 points per game and was deservedly named Rookie of the Year. For a player just beginning his career, this was an outstanding result. Yet the most impressive thing happened the very next season. Barry reached an entirely different level. He became a true scoring machine, finishing the regular season with an average of over 35 points per match. This was the best result in the entire league. Every game turned into a genuine test for opponents. It was impossible to stop him with a single defender, and constant double teams far from always brought results. Thanks to their leader, the Warriors rapidly turned into one of the main contenders for the title. The team confidently marched through the tournament schedule and reached the NBA Finals, where they met the mighty Philadelphia 76ers led by Wilt Chamberlain. Despite losing the series, Barry made a tremendous impression. In the finals, he continued to play at the level of a true superstar, ultimately proving that his success was far from accidental. It seemed a long era of domination with the Warriors was opening up before him. A young leader, incredible statistics, the fans' love, and a team ready to contend for a championship. From the outside, everything looked almost perfect. Yet, it was precisely at this moment that the traits which would later define his entire career began to manifest. Barry believed that a player of his level deserved corresponding treatment and fair compensation. In the mid-60s, club owners completely controlled the situation. Basketball players practically had no choice over where to play, and contract negotiations rarely took place on equal terms. Many agreed to the existing rules, understanding that changing the system was impossible. Rick turned out to be a different kind of person. He was not going to tolerate what he considered unfair. When the Warriors' management refused to meet his financial demands, the conflict began to escalate rapidly. Negotiations grew increasingly tense, and each new meeting only widened the gap between the club and its main star. Most players in a similar situation would have preferred to yield. Losing a place in the NBA back then meant putting an entire career at risk. But Barry acted the way he always did. He refused to obey just because that was the custom. This decision shocked the entire basketball world. In the middle of his rapidly rising career, after a season in which he became the league's top scorer and led the team to the finals, Rick was ready to risk absolutely everything. Ahead of him lay a step that many called madness, and some considered true betrayal of the NBA. It was this choice that would forever alter not only his own reputation, but the entire history of professional basketball. In 1967, Rick Barry made a decision that looked almost unbelievable for its time. Instead of continuing to play for one of the strongest teams in the NBA, he signed a contract with the Oakland Oaks of the young ABA League. Today, transfers between leagues seem commonplace, but back then, this move was perceived as an open challenge to the entire professional basketball system. The reason was not just money. Barry was convinced that a player has the right to independently choose the conditions of his career, rather than unconditionally accept the decisions of club owners. The Warriors' management thought otherwise. The conflict, which had developed behind closed doors for a long time, reached a new level and quickly turned into a loud, legal standoff. However, reality proved much more complex than Barry himself had expected. Due to existing contractual obligations, the court banned him from playing for the Oakland Oaks immediately. Instead of a full season, he found himself in a highly unusual situation. Formally, he had already left the NBA, but he could not play for his new club either. Instead of stepping onto the court, he had to spend long months serving as a television commentator and analyst, watching basketball from the sidelines. For an athlete at the peak of his form, this was a severe test. Just recently, he was considered one of the most dangerous players in the league, and now he was forced to watch others continue their careers without him. Many experts were certain that such a prolonged break would inevitably affect his play. Some even began saying that Barry had made the biggest mistake of his life. When legal obstacles were finally removed, he made his debut in the ABA under immense pressure. Any poor performance would have served as proof that the critics were right. But something completely different happened. Barry almost immediately proved that he remained a player of exceptional caliber. He once again began regularly scoring large amounts of points, demonstrated a magnificent understanding of the game, and quickly became one of the main stars of the new league. Nevertheless, tranquility still did not surround his name. For many NBA fans, he turned into a man who had turned his back on the premier basketball league for the sake of a more lucrative contract. Journalists actively discussed his actions, and the attitude toward Barry himself became increasingly contradictory. Some admired the fact that he was not afraid to challenge influential club owners. Others believed that a true superstar should never have left the NBA. Yet the trials did not end there. While playing for the Oakland Oaks, Barry suffered a severe knee injury that caused him to miss a significant portion of the season. For a basketball player whose game was built on constant movement and high intensity, such an injury could have marked the beginning of a sharp decline. In those years, the capabilities of sports medicine were incomparable to modern ones, and many players never returned to their previous level after such injuries. Talk surfaced once again that Barry's best years were behind him. Skeptics claimed that first he voluntarily left the NBA, then lost precious time due to legal battles, and now had also encountered a severe injury. It seemed the career that had started so rapidly was gradually hitting a dead end. Yet it was precisely in such moments that Rick Barry's character manifested itself best. The more doubts sounded around him, the stronger his desire to prove the opposite became. Ahead of him lay a new stage that would finally show his talent had not vanished anywhere, and all the greatest victories of his life were still ahead. Very soon, he would return to the NBA and accomplish what many still consider one of the most impressive championship runs in league history. Following the ABA-NBA merger, Barry found himself back on the Golden State Warriors roster. Many doubted whether he could become the team's leader once again after all the conflicts and his severe injury. The answer followed very quickly. He did not simply return to his previous level. He turned the Warriors into championship contenders. In the 1974-75 season, Barry was the undisputed leader of the squad. And in the playoffs, his play grew even stronger. In the final series against the Washington Bullets, it was he who drove the team forward, steadily scoring points, creating opportunities for teammates, and completely controlling the flow of the matches. The Warriors unexpectedly won the series 4-0, and Barry was named Finals MVP. Many basketball historians still consider this title one of the most unexpected in NBA history, as Rick's leadership qualities were the main factor in their championship success. Yet even after this triumph, his relationships with those around him barely changed. Barry still openly criticized teammates' mistakes, argued with coaches, made no secret of his dissatisfaction with referee decisions, and was not afraid to voice his opinions to club management. He demanded complete dedication from everyone who stepped onto the court with him. Some called this the maximalism of a true champion, while others considered him arrogant and overly harsh. Over time, his reputation for a difficult personality solidified so firmly that talk of conflicts often sounded just as frequently as discussions of his outstanding play. At the same time, virtually no one questioned his skill. Even his harshest critics acknowledged that Barry was one of the smartest and most talented players of his generation. There is yet another detail that made him forever unique. Rick Barry shot underhand free throws, holding the ball with both hands between his legs. Fans, journalists, and even many players laughed at this method. However, Barry himself saw no reason to change anything. His accuracy exceeded 90%, making him one of the best free throw shooters in NBA history. He always repeated a simple thought: if a method yields results, it does not matter how unusual it looks. Paradoxically, today, most players prefer a less efficient technique just so they don't look ridiculous. The story of this shot seemed to reflect Barry's entire career. He constantly went against conventional rules, and very often turned out to be right. Barry spent the final years of his career on various teams, and after retiring from professional sports, he became a television commentator. But his straightforwardness did not vanish there either. He continued to sharply evaluate players, coaches, and referee decisions, regularly finding himself at the center of new controversies. Despite this, his basketball knowledge always commanded respect. A special source of pride for him became his family. All four of his sons subsequently played professional basketball, and his son, Brent Barry, achieved major success in the NBA, winning the league championship twice. Over time, Rick mellowed, but he could never completely abandon his habit of speaking his mind. Today, Rick Barry ranks among the greatest players in basketball history. An NBA champion, Finals MVP, Hall of Famer, one of the top scorers of his generation, and a man who proved he was ready to go against any rules and public opinion for the sake of victory. But his history also reminds us of the other side of big-time sports. Sometimes, a single outstanding talent is not enough to become a universal favorite. Barry left behind a massive legacy, Yet alongside great victories, he forever retained the reputation of the most inconvenient man of his era.